The night sky over the East China Sea glowed with the lights of afterburners. 50 Chinese warplanes surged toward the contested waters near the Senkaku Islands, a show of force designed to rattle nerves and test resolve. Below them, hidden among clusters of fishing boats, unusual activity stirred. From the decks of modified vessels and disguised platforms, small kamikaze sea drones hummed to life, their engines buzzing like swarms of angry wasps. On the horizon, the silhouette of a lone U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer cut across the dark waves. Its crew of 300 men and women knew this was no routine patrol. Radar screens pulsed with warnings, radios crackled with tension, and the order came down fast. Prepare for a saturation attack. Within minutes, the ship's layered defenses, missiles, jammers, and close-in cannons would face one of the most aggressive drone swarms ever launched in these waters. The countdown to chaos had begun. For months, tensions in the East China Sea had been simmering. The Senkaku Islands, tiny and uninhabited, carried immense symbolic weight for both China and Japan, with the United States bound by treaty to defend Tokyo's claims. Each maneuver in these contested waters risked triggering something larger, something no one wanted but everyone prepared for. China's strategy was clear: overwhelm U.S. and allied forces not with one decisive strike, but with waves of cheap, expendable systems. A swarm of drones costing a fraction of a single U.S. missile could force commanders into impossible choices: spend millions to shoot them down, or risk letting one slip through. That night, the challenge escalated, with 50 warplanes overhead as both distraction and intimidation. The sea drones posed the true danger. They skimmed above the waves, radar signatures so faint they seemed like ghosts until it was nearly too late. The U.S. destroyer's sensors tracked dozens, then hundreds, as the swarm spread out to encircle its position. The crew braced. In seconds, the engagement would test whether America's layered defenses could withstand the future of naval warfare or collapse under sheer numbers. Would steel, training, and technology be enough against swarms designed to saturate every system at once? As both sides closed, one truth became unavoidable. This was no drill. The clash ahead would be remembered not just as another skirmish, but as a glimpse of tomorrow's wars. And before we dive into the battle, what do you think? If you believe the U.S. Navy will hold the line, press 1" the comments. If you think China's swarm can break through, press 9. The first warning came as a sharp tone from the Combat Information Center. Multiple fast-moving contacts, bearing 085, closing range. The display lit up with blips scattered like a storm of insects. The commanding officer ordered immediate battle stations, and the crew shifted into rehearsed precision. The destroyers and Spy 1DV radar tracked the swarm while the electronic warfare team activated jamming to disrupt drone guidance systems. Above, the ship's MH-60R Seahawk launched, skimming low across the waves, dropping sonar buoys to detect any underwater surprises while relaying targeting data back to the ship. At altitude, a 8 amperes Poseidon monitored the chaos from afar, feeding intelligence into the tactical picture. The first volley of evolved Sea Sparrow missiles shot upward, streaking into the night sky before diving down onto clusters of drones. Explosions rippled across the water's surface, metal fragments and fire lighting the dark sea. Yet for every wave destroyed, more pressed forward. The swarm was designed for this, forcing defenses to expend ammunition at an unsustainable rate. Close-in weapon systems opened fire. The Phalanx CIWS spun to life, spitting streams of depleted uranium rounds at incoming drones, its radar-guided bursts shredding targets within seconds of contact. The RIM 116 Ram missiles joined in, picking off fast movers that slipped through the outer layers. Still, gaps appeared. A handful of drones skimmed dangerously close to the hull before detonating harmlessly against the ship's wake. Inside the operations center, tension was rising. Displays showed ammunition counts ticking downward. Every missile fired represented hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to destroy a drone worth a fraction of that. The cost exchange was brutal and exactly what the Chinese planners had intended. The commander's voice cut through the noise. Keep the pressure steady. Prioritize cluster formations. Don't chase stragglers. It was a battle of endurance, of calculated discipline against sheer volume. The first minutes of combat had proven one thing. The U.S. layered defense worked, but the margin for error was razor thin. As the sea churned with debris and fire, the crew realized the engagement was only beginning. What lay ahead would push every system and every sailor to their limits. The battle dragged on minute by minute as the swarm pressed from every direction. The sea itself seemed alive with hostile intent, a churning mass of wakes where the drones cut across the waves. The destroyer's defenses worked relentlessly, but strain was setting in not for the machines, but for the crew. Every alert, every impact, every intercepted target was another jolt to nerves stretched thin. The MH-60R Seahawk circled back, pylons empty, its crew reporting dozens more drones advancing from disguised fishing vessels on the horizon. That revelation chilled the command center. The enemy was not running out. What looked like scattered fishing fleets were mobile launch platforms, hidden until the moment of release. A second wave slammed in from the west. ESSM interceptors streaked upward, detonating in fiery blossoms above the water. The failing CIWS screamed, barrels glowing red-hot as it cut down anything that slipped through. But fatigue was measurable now. Ammunition stores were dipping into the red. The crew could see the numbers each shot, each launch, dwindling their ability to keep pace. Below deck, sailors carried fresh missile canisters and ammo belts to reload stations, sweat pouring down despite the night air. The destroyer was holding, but barely. Shrapnel from intercepted drones rattled across the deck, damaging antennas and sensors. Though minor, each hit reminded them one lucky breakthrough could change everything. From the bridge, the captain studied the tactical picture. "They're probing us, measuring every response," he muttered. This wasn't just an attack. It was data collection, a rehearsal for future wars. Each missile fired was a lesson to Chinese planners on how far defenses could be stretched. The ship remained intact, but pressure mounted with every passing second. As the swarm regrouped for another push, the sailors knew they faced not just drones, but a strategy designed to bleed them dry. And right here's where the clash feels most intense. What do you think? If you're backing the US crew to endure the storm, press 1" the comments. If you think China's swarm tactics will overwhelm them, press 9. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next phase of this showdown. Just when it seemed the destroyer had settled into a rhythm of intercept and reload, the swarm shifted tactics. Instead of rushing headlong in tight waves, dozens of drones suddenly dove beneath the surface, their small electric motors churning quietly below the chop. The radar picture thinned, but sonar operators called out in alarm new contacts rising from beneath the waves. These were not standard kamikaze boats. Modified variants carried warheads designed to explode underwater, using shock waves to cripple hulls and propellers. It was the kind of threat the ship's defenses were not fully optimized against. Surface-to-air missiles were useless here, and even the phalanx struggled to lock onto targets half submerged. The MH-60R dropped additional sonar buoys, desperately mapping the undersea chaos. Pate Ampère's operators relayed the data. The drones had adapted, exploiting the blind spots between surface radar and sonar coverage. Every sailor on board realized the implications. China wasn't just testing numbers. They were experimenting with combinations, weaving air, surface, and underwater threats into a single layered assault. Inside the operations center, the weight of the situation pressed down. The destroyer was still holding, but the margin was evaporating. Damage control teams prepared for possible flooding scenarios, sealing compartments, and readying pumps. For the first time, the thought crept in. A breakthrough was not only possible, it was likely. The captain tightened his grip on the console. "They've changed the game," he said grimly. What had started as a battle against swarming speedboats was evolving into something far more dangerous. A playbook for future wars, unfolding in real time. The sea erupted as submerged drones made their move. Sonar operators shouted warnings while combat systems struggled to track fast-rising contacts. Torpedo alarms wailed, though these were crude but deadly underwater kamikazes, aiming to cripple the destroyer's hull. The captain ordered countermeasures. Decoys splashed into the water, creating false signatures to lure drones off course. Depth charges rolled from the stern, exploding in thunderous plumes that rocked the ship. Some drones were shredded instantly, others pressed on, their motors buzzing toward the destroyer's underside. On the surface, the swarm pushed in. ESSM and ram stocks were nearly gone, leaving the phalanx CIWS as the last shield. Its guns roared, tracers stitching the night, bursts cutting down drones' meters from impact. Sailors on deck covered their ears against the deafening storm. A sudden jolt rocked the ship. One drone exploded close enough to shear off an antenna mast. Sparks showered the deck, comms scrambled. Damage control teams rushed to stabilize power and extinguish fires. Below deck, engineers rerouted power through scorched conduits, nursing battered circuits back to life. The destroyer kept fighting, refusing to yield. Above, the Seahawk returned, unleashing hellfires on disguised fishing vessels that had launched wave after wave. Explosions tore through several silencing platforms, fueling the assault. The Pate Amperes confirmed losses, multiple launch points destroyed, Chinese crews abandoning wrecks. But even as platforms burned, the sheer number of drones already at sea meant the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. The destroyer's defenses were battered but intact, its crew exhausted but unbroken. Against overwhelming odds, every system and every sailor stood locked in a desperate stand. This was the climax. America's finest technology and training colliding with China's relentless swarm. The question was no longer about weapons alone. It was about willpower, endurance, and the future of naval warfare itself. And now it's your call. Who do you think has the upper hand in this climax? If you're backing the US Navy to hold, press 1 in the comments. If you think China's swarm can still break through, press 9 and hit subscribe so you don't miss the aftermath. When the last fragments slipped beneath the waves, silence returned to the East China Sea. Smoke drifted over the swells, dotted with burning wrecks of disguised fishing boats. The U.S. destroyer rode the chop, scorched yet afloat, antennas bent, sensors damaged, crew exhausted but steady. Reports fixed the scale. 160-200 sea drones launched, with an 85-95% kill rate. The ship logged minor damage to masts and arrays. A few scars on the superstructure, but propulsion intact. It had endured one of the fiercest swarm assaults ever attempted. Chinese losses were heavy. Several launch platforms, fishing craft turned covert magazines were sunk or burning. Survivors were pulled from the sea, others missing. The cost ran into tens of millions, but the true aim was not destruction, it was measurement. Collecting data on U.S. responses under saturation. For the sailors, relief mixed with unease. Ammunition stocks were low. Each ESSM or RAM cost hundreds of thousands, while the enemy sacrificed drones worth far less. The imbalance was clear. Fleets can win, yet still bleed their magazines dry. Still, doctrine held. Layered defenses, radar, jamming, missiles, guns, helicopter, and patrol aircraft functioned as designed. Damage control was swift, and strikes on disguised launchers blunted the assault before it could regenerate. Training and discipline, not luck, kept the ship in the fight. Analysts called the clash a glimpse of the future. Warships under constant pressure from cheap expendables. Battles defined as much by numbers and logistics as firepower. Tonight, the edge belonged to the U.S. crew. Tomorrow, the equation may shift. As dawn rose, sailors scanned the horizon for signs of another wave. The message was unmistakable. The seas around the Senkakus were more contested than ever. So what's your verdict? Hard-won victory, or just the opening act of something larger? If you stand with the U.S. Navy, press 1 in the comments. If you believe China's swarm strategy will prevail, press 9. And subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.